Hello students, today's agenda is to check your homework. We're going to be learning about inverse functions and you will be able to do 7.7. Today students will be able to find the inverse function of another function and check that they are inverse of each other. So you do need to do the checkup test. Okay. So first of all, I want to share with you that when we're talking about inverse functions, is a reflection with the mirror in here. Okay, so whatever part of the graph is on this side, it basically reflects on this side, and whatever is on this side, it reflects on the other side of this line. Okay, you don't have to graph, it's just so that you understand that. So basically, let's say that I have, maybe if I have a line that is, I don't know, like this maybe. This will reflect here and this will reflect here. Or if I have, I guess I should have done it with pencil so that I can show you. Maybe if I have something like this, then the reflection would be of the inverse function would be like this. Okay, so it's just, this tells me the mirror image about this line. Okay, again, you don't have to worry about the graph, it's just so that you understand excuse me, what inverse functions are. So I'm gonna start by giving you just the steps that you need to follow to be able to find the inverse. So if you can right now take a minute to write this down. Finding the inverse of a function. The first step is to replace f of x with y. And right now you might not understand what this means, but just write them down and we're going to be following them. The second step is to switch the x's and the y's. The third step is to solve for y, meaning leave y by itself. And number 4 is to replace y with f of -1 of x. This means the inverse function of x. Okay, you already found the equation for this other graph. Okay, so let's start, and I don't know if I can fit on the side these steps so that you can actually just follow them. Maybe I'll zoom out, and that's as much as I can go actually. Okay, so let's start the finding the function of the first one. I'm gonna have number 1 is gonna be f of x, that's my regular function, is equals to 7x plus 2. Okay, so I want to find the mirror image of this, basically the inverse function of that. And so the first thing that I'm gonna do is to replace f of x, meaning this part right here, with y. So it's not gonna be f of x, but rather y equals 7x plus 2. Then I'm gonna switch my x's and y's. So instead of putting y in here, I'm gonna put x. Instead of putting x in here, I'm gonna put y. Okay. Then I'm gonna solve for y, meaning I need to leave y alone. I'm gonna isolate y by eliminating. And so I'm gonna eliminate -2 minus 2. I get x minus 2 is equals to 7y. Finally, I'm going to divide by 7 so that I can leave y by itself. And so I'm just going to put this at the beginning. So my y, isolated y, is equals to all of this, which is x minus 2 over 7. Okay? The last step is to replace y with inverse function of x, meaning the mirror image of the original function is, and then you will have the equation. So this is going to be written as f of negative 1, meaning the inverse function of x is x minus 2 over 7. So that's my inverse function. That's, for example, and this is not it, you know, in reality, you have a line with this. So you will have this, and this function gives you, let me show you a little bit more clear. So more or less, this would be something like this. Okay? And if I have this mirror, that means that I would have something like this. Okay? So this is the function for this graph. This is the function for this other graph. Okay? See how those are inverse of each other. Okay? Again, you don't have to worry about this part. It's just so that you know or understand what you're doing. Now, I'm gonna ask that for this assignment and for the test, you actually do the checkup test to make sure that they are inverse of each other. And I'm gonna move that to the side so that you can focus on this. But some people find it a little tricky. What you're gonna do is that you're gonna use this part of the function. So 7x plus 2. But then, instead of writing this x, you're gonna write the inverse function in there. Okay, this inverse function replacing my x in here. So it's gonna be 7 times everything in here. Instead of the x, it's gonna be everything in here minus 2 over 7, and then plus 2. And you're gonna start canceling whatever is possible to cancel. We cannot cancel this negative 2 with this plus 2 because it's being divided. This whole thing is being divided by 7. But whatever we're dividing and multiplying, that can cancel with each other. Okay, they're inverse properties of multiplication. And so you have x minus 2, you don't have the 7 anymore, and plus 2. Now that it's outside of the parentheses and it's not being divided by anything, you can cancel negative 2 with positive 2 because that's inverse property of addition, and so you end up with x. Okay? The next part of the checkup test, because you have to do 2 parts, you cannot do just one. The other part is that now you don't get this equation, but you get this part of the inverse function. And so it's going to be x minus 2 divided by 7, but now you're going to replace this x with the original function. Only this part, okay? Don't worry about this part. So instead of writing x, you write this whole thing. So it's going to be 7x plus 2, okay? And then start subtracting the 2 and dividing by 7. So in here, the first thing that you cancel is not the 7s because you have many other things going on. Okay, so this 7 will cancel with this, but then you would have fractions in here, and we don't want that. What we're going to be canceling first is the positive 2 and the negative 2. They cancel each other, And so we end up with, let me see, I need to move it a little bit up, 7x over 7. These cancel each other because 7 divided by 7 is equals to 1, and so my answer will be x. So, in my checkup test, if I end up with canceling everything in here and 1x in here, and for the other one I also end up with an x, that means that my function and the result are in fact inverse of a function, okay? They're inverse of each other. So we can say check. Okay, let's do a couple more examples. If I have f of x equals 4x, and this looks simple, but some people get confused with that. So let's follow the steps. The first thing that we need to do is replace f of x with y. So it's going to be y equals 4x. We switch the x's and y, so instead of y is going to be x, instead of x is going to be y. We solve for y, which is very simple because if we're multiplying, the opposite is to divide. And so my y is equals to x over 4. And finally, we replace y with f of -1 of x. So instead of writing this, however, I'm going to put it in here first, okay? So that it looks more traditional. This is how it's written. So the inverse function of x is x over 4. So the regular function of x is 4x. The inverse function of x is x over 4. Okay, that's what it means. And I'm going to circle this in different colors so that you can easily replace. Checkup test now. So remember that if they cancel to be x only for both of them, that means that the checkup test is correct. Okay, checkup test. So I'm going to write this, and I'm going to replace my x with the inverse function. Notice how I'm using colors. If that helps you, I would recommend that you use colors to help you, guide you. Okay, instead of x, I replace it with the inverse function. So x over 4. And in here, all I need to cancel is the multiplication with the division, and I end up with x. Now, since I got this one to begin with, for the second part of the check, I'm going to get the solution of the inverse. But I'm going to replace this x with the original function. And so it's going to be, instead of x, it's going to be 4x divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 is equals to 1. And so I end up with x. So since I canceled everything and I ended up with x in here and x in here, that means that we say check. Okay, let's do one more example, and I think you'll be ready to start working on your assignment. So we have f of x is equals to -3x minus 2. And we follow these steps again. The first one is to replace f of x with y. I'm going to do it a little bit faster since I hope you got the hang of it. I'm going to switch the x and y. I'm going to solve for y by canceling. So if I'm subtracting 2, the opposite is adding 2. So I have x minus 2 is equals to negative 3y. I'm going to divide by negative 3. And so my y, notice how I'm switching it already. My y is equals to x minus 2 over negative 3. And finally, I replace my y with f of negative 1 of x, meaning the inverse function of x is equals to x minus 2 over negative 3. Okay, so again, this is my original function. If we think about it, my original function, which in reality is a line, actually it's a line like this, and this is my inverse function, the mirror image of that. For my checkup test, I'm gonna get this checkup test. So negative 3x minus 2, but my x, notice how I'm getting the pink, so I put my x with green so that I can remember to use this one. X minus 2 over negative 3 minus 2, and I start canceling. I cannot cancel. Okay, something happened here. I see where I made a mistake. So I was gonna say, notice that I cannot cancel this, and so I can, well, let me show you something, because I made a mistake, and that helps us understand why it's important to do the checkup test. So I cancel the multiplication with the division, and I end up with x minus 2 minus 2. I have two negatives, so they cannot cancel each other. Therefore, that means that this is not correct, and I made a mistake. And we're gonna go back to this. If you notice, I was supposed to cancel by adding, and what did I do? When I added x plus 2, I put x minus 2. So that's where my mistake is, see? That's why it's important to do the checkup test. So in here, it's gonna be actually plus 2. So x plus 2, it's also in here, x plus 2. And right here, x plus 2. So now I can go back to the checkup test and see if my new version, my new correction, made it right. Okay, I'm putting this x plus 2 divided by negative 3. So these were able to cancel. And now I have x plus 2 and minus 2. So my checkup test helped me notice that I made a mistake when I was trying to find my inverse function. And now that I corrected it, now I end up with x. Okay. For the next one, I'm gonna get not the pink one, but the green one. And since I'm getting the green one, I'm gonna replace my x with the pink one. And so it's gonna be negative 3x plus 2 divided by negative 3 . What I did? No. I'm sorry. I was checking to make sure that it was inside of the screen, because I noticed I was going off the screen and you couldn't see. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm replacing my x, which is this whole thing, but I'm replacing only the x with the pink. So it's negative 3 minus 2, and that's just for the x part. And I put the rest of the inverse function, plus 2 divided by negative 3. I start canceling, and so these can cancel each other. And so I end up with negative 3x over negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is positive 1, and that's why they cancel, 1x. Okay, so that's my answer right there. Okay, so since I got, after I made the correction, I did get x in here, and I did get x in here, we can say that now I do have the correct inverse function. Okay, so now you can work on 7.7, and I hope you have fun. And if you do have errors like this, still enjoy it. Goodbye.